Just a minute. Hi, this is Jane. I'm with Political Gravity. We have a couple hosts on the line. Today it's Tuesday, May 20th, and it's actually snowing in Minnesota. Isn't that special? Anyways, I was watching a couple different news outlets in the last 24 hours. The United Kingdom, along with part of the EU, is planning sanctions on Israel because Israel has killed over 500 people in the last 8 days. One family, their whole bodies were torn apart, not even recognizable. And the blockades are continuing, and the actual starvation is actually going on now. Now, Germany disagrees and said they won't sanction Israel. There's some non-agreement within that institution, but I know that the UK and Canada themselves are going to be withholding help or normal market trade to Israel. Secondly, Donald Trump is planning an Iron Dome system similar to what Israel has. The only problem is in his big spending bill that it was submitted to Congress and is now in individual committees. He's taking money from Medicare to put towards the military. And I don't know if every American would agree with that. I had a friend who's 75 who gets shots in her eyes 4 times a year. And because of Trump's already Medicare cuts, she has to pay $400 every 3 months instead of the $40 she was paying before. And her income is only $1,200 a month. So she has to do a side hustle on her lawnmower. It's one of those riding mowers. And I wouldn't want to think of having to do side hustles when I'm 75. Also in the news, there was 7 people escaped from the New Orleans prison because there was a hole in the wall behind the toilet. And they're putting a bounty on their heads, but so far they haven't caught anybody. And in the international community, including the U.S. and the U.K. and the European Union, everybody's lifting sanctions on Syria and doing regular business with them now because Bashar al-Assad is no longer in relations with that country. So that's my news stories for the hour. I would first like Don, and then later tonight I'm going to talk about some cultural differences that divide people and how people go to the extreme. So which one of you guys want to start commenting on what either I said or something new that you have?
Well, I know that as far as Israel goes, I was watching some news on that, and it looks like they're planning some type of sweeping bombing, and they had supposedly dropped leaflets and you call it? Oh, and text messages.
Like evacuation notices?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the devastation there is incredible. It's like, the text messages they sent out. The person that was talking about it has said, those people don't even have places to charge their phones. I mean, it's not funny, but.
Well, it's similar to like when they sent those explosive devices through phones in Lebanon. Like, This isn't like, it's not like Gaza's a first world country. They don't have their iPhones plugged into their invisible wall.
Right.
So, why do each of you think that Israel is being so hard-headed? Like, they can't root out every member of the Hamas, like, kill 50 people for one Hamas member. Is that their strategy?
I think they just want to just take over that whole area, and for money purposes,
I agree with that, but can't they at least get a caravan of some sort to move these other civilians that aren't causing harm into a different area? Like they're still there; they can't wipe them out.
I know you would think so, but I frankly I don't think that. Well, Netanyahu cares, and that's unfortunate. They're still humans, they're still people, but I don't think that they see them as that, or he sees them as that.
Right. I heard the Israeli people want the war to end too.
Well, exactly. Good. And to stop the human suffering. But Netanyahu's not listening.
After watching the United Kingdom in their parliament, like they don't just stand up and like say something. Like they use dramatic moves. They shout, they scream, they stomp their hands. Like they use all kinds of theatrics in the English parliament to express their viewpoints.
Yeah,
because they're animals.
No, they're not. That's their style.
No, they're talking over each other. If you notice, every nationality in the world is represented there, but they can't express themselves in a normal fashion because they don't know how. Each of them communicates in a different way. But the Israeli situation, if you're competitive, the main thing you want to do is when the opponent is down, you want to step on the neck. And so that's what Israel is doing. Netanyahu is having fun being a dictator. He was trying to keep that democratic government going, and he tried his best, but he wasn't able to stay out of some wars, but he was an aggressor in a couple, and so the fear factor it's very, very strong for Israelis, and they pray because they fear, and that's something that we have to take into account. But he wants to step on his aggressor's neck as hard as he can, and ultimately colonize that area, because that's what essentially it's all about. Israeli land grabs so that they can expand. Now, and this bill that we're talking about, this bill is going to send us into a spiral because it's more spend than it is giving back, and that's the problem. We need to make sure that the bill, a budget bill, is standalone, and all these other bills are on their own individually or put together. So,
have any of you guys examined the big beautiful bill that Trump describes?
I haven't in detail, but I've perused the outlines of it, and it includes that that you were talking about, or Golden Dome that you were talking about, and that's for Elon, but it also includes some other. I'm trying to remember what it is. Something about national parks, taking money from national parks and things. So a couple other things in the bill.
Medicare?
Well, Medicare is going to be relatively left alone. They're going to try to...
well, they have cut corners on it.
Cut corners, but
yeah.
They haven't got it. It's Medicaid that they're going after. Medicaid they're going after fast. And if they had their way, it would be almost eliminated. Medicaid is for those people who are really indigent.
They're poor and they're under age 65.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the easiest way to cut. You cut off the legs of disabled people. Then you got a whole another can of worms paying for them
Well, they're supposed to vote on it Friday. They're tinkering with it in committees.
Right. And the as far as the GOP goes, you've got people half and half that.
If they lose 4 of them, the bill is dead.
If what, Don?
If 4 GOP members cross the line and don't vote for it, then it's dead. I think they have 7 who have questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Against the bill.
Since we're not talking, we're just talking headline news right now. I'm going to mention one more story, and then I'm going to shift gears a little and go into philosophy, because I've been dealing with this problem for weeks with some co-hosts. So, was it Don or Suzette who was on the show the night that John was going on and on about Islamic population increase in the Midwest and how they wanted to change society? Which one of you guys were on the air that night?
It wasn't me.
Okay, well, we'll discuss that later.
I think that was one night that I missed that night, I think.
Okay, I'm leading up to that point, but before, and I'm not bashing John because I invited him into the show. I'm going to talk about another discrepancy. So, okay, first I'm going to go back to the story on the 6 escapees from the New Orleans jail that seemed to be.
There were 10. One was caught relatively immediately. 2 more were caught 2 nights ago, and 7 are still out on the loose. $10,000 reward for each head, and they left a note saying too easy.
I heard that there was a hole in the bathroom.
And they cut it out over time.
Yeah, and then supposedly they had inside help.
Well, they had cameras on where they were cutting on the inside, and they had cameras that were pointed at the hole on the outside. So somebody should have seen something.
In other words, over the course of time, the cameras were directed to those areas, so it wasn't a secret?
That shouldn't have been a secret, or they were so clandestine that you can always put a towel over camera, and somebody's going to see that too. But I don't know how they didn't get seen. It's just
also
either behind.
You're kind of fading in and out, Don.
I think in some cases I was listening to a story on NPR today. Benjamin Spencer got taken out of prison after 34 to 37 years, and he was found innocent right away. Back in the day, they had paid some witnesses to say that he killed someone during a robbery, but he would not admit any kind of guilt to any lesser crime, so he got life in prison. But then when stuff started coming out that he was innocent, then Dallas was one of the very first cities to set up a watchdog committee on courts that don't follow procedure, and they were like the preeminence to the Innocent Project. So basically, over time, all this stuff unraveled, and it was discovered. Some of the jurors even came out and said that I voted wrong in the trial. And can everybody hear okay?
Right now, yeah.
Okay, so anyways, it was determined through this Texas project that he was innocent, but it still took him that was in 2007, and it still took him 15 to 20 more years to get him out. Well, when he finally got out, he wasn't bitter when he came out. He was just thankful for all the help. And what I'm trying to say is, looking at this penal system, that because Donald Trump complains about costs a lot, maybe they should start releasing about 10% of prisoners in every state.
They can't.
Why?
It's a huge part of a state budget. Nevada, for instance, California, the prison system, Suzette, you might know, is huge. Absolutely huge. Man, I don't know any numbers. You might want to look that up. I might want to look that up. That's very interesting. But in Nevada here, we have 4 distinct and prominent corporations. And the first one is mining. The next one is gaming. The next one is ranching, and the next one is corrections. And we have more corrections officers coming through here than almost any other industry. So that's something that doesn't take a brain, and it was, so that's why our educational system is one of the worst, actually 52nd, because Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands is smarter than our kids here in Nevada. But that's on purpose. All the things that you were talking about are on purpose. The incarceration of especially minorities is on purpose. They need to have those folks off the street to not only make it appear that they're law and order, but also to keep that industry, the corrections industry, going. So this is, you got to say, when you look at something, you got to look at the other side and look how it comes full circle.
Well, it's something that just popped in my mind right now.
Okay, well, they're looking to continue corrections. We in fact began, or we're running the states that began to take state inmates in from other states for overcrowding, and so we were getting paid very good money for Wyoming and Utah.
Well, besides license plates, what else do prisoners produce?
Everything. I mean, everything. They produce like windows and I think windows, doors, all kinds of other.
It's okay.
No.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna try to look it up on my computer while you guys are talking.
All right, no problem. But yeah, you see where it's not necessarily important to educate these kids, but the main thing is that the educational perception is important, because that's the biggest sieve of money every state outlays. Education is the number 1 budgetary item in most every state, and the easiest one to graft and steal. And that's what they do. They make it seem like their children are doing great, and they just keep on pushing them forward just like normal, where a failing kid still go to the next grade. And so, it's just a self-propelled industry, and it needs to be taken a hold of instead of necessarily disbanded with the dismantling of the Department of Education. And it's just horrible the way that some people are doing, the way some people are taking from people who can't live, essentially.
John's calling. Hold on. John's calling in. John's on the air. I was going to tell them about our Taylor Swift fight, but I was waiting for you to come in. Now, we love
Taylor Swift.
I did some brief research. We're on the topic of prisons. Minnesota and an East Coast state pay $2 an hour to prisoners. In Virginia, private industry buys furniture that prisoners make. 8 states in America don't pay the prisoners a darn penny for what they do. And other states like California produce agriculture.
Well, that's what, I mean, we do, the prisoners do have horses training, dog training. They also...
Well, they can get their degree there, but I'm asking you what kind of output they provide.
Well, I mean, they save states. When the states have a fire, you're getting the prisoners from the Division of Forestry. I know, I was one of them. And so you have them trained and, in fact, well trained. Excellent equipment. The crew chiefs are knowledgeable, and they're not always fair, but they're knowledgeable. But the thing is that you are able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars during fires, because the Division of Fire Tree are the ones who are laying down the tracks and backburning and bucking everything so that it's not going to stay in a fire, in the way of a fire, and rehab. So you're talking about an enormous amount of cost savings for our states.
Okay, I know in a couple of years ago when California had over 20 fires, didn't they use some prisoners to help?
That's what I'm saying. They use prisoners for every fire.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not an expert.
No, I'm just saying. No, if you listen, I'm telling you. For the most part, the prison system provides force-ready, even hotshots, force-ready firefighters, forest firefighters, because there's a huge difference between forest and structural fires. So you've got to train forest fighters, but you're also, training hotshots. And these guys are amazing. The prisoners, they have no fear. They're jumping out of planes and right in the middle of the action, and they're just doing their thing. They can climb trees 67 to 80 feet. It's incredible what these men and women can do who are incarcerated, and that's why they're incarcerated, because they're a threat to the society. They can do things other people can't do. Spider-Man has nothing on some of these guys, seriously. And so you're really looking at the entire scope of what prisons do. Kirkland, if you know Kirkland brand, and if you go to Costco, that's Dick Kirkland.
I've heard of Kirkland brand.
They're both Kirkland brands. If I know the story right, and I'm sure I don't, but Dick Kirkland was the Nevada director of prisons, and he also was able to get into the food services because of the chow hall, and slowly developed his brand to go, out of the prison, and he retired or left, and the next thing you know, his brand is all over the place, and that's Kirkland. That's Dick Kirkland. I believe that's him. It was Kirkland, the owner, and it might be the thief of Kirkland. Did you guys
know that the My Pillow guy was a felon, and he was a big Trump supporter?
Of course, Trump.
Yeah. These work programs entail equipment assembly services, paint, brushes and paints, stove assembly, body armor, home appliances, headphones, microphones, speakers, office furniture, government office furniture, law enforcement gear and apparel, military hospital beds, personal eyewear, computer circuit boards, and solar panels. And these programs are there to help prisoners obtain skills. So the government benefits because of their labor, their cheap labor, but also the prisoners benefit as well because they, acquire job skills. So when they are released, these work release programs, they have a skill to, start their new life with. So it's, it's not necessarily a bad thing as far as the government having these programs for the prisoners while in prison. Of course, they benefit, humongously, but but they also acquire skills too, rather than just sitting in their cell doing nothing. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a big money maker, and that's why they call it prison industries, because it is a corporation, a government corporation.
So you're simply somebody working for somebody else for $2.50 a day.
Yeah, I am, and I'll tell you why. Because, again, I really say again, it's better than just sitting in the cell and rotting. And they're in prison for a reason. They're being punished. It's not so that they can earn a living. These are just extra programs so that they can acquire skills so that they don't have to return. So, it's not there to make a living.
Well, you consider this. The ultimate hypocrisy is that the firefighters who learn all these skills and others who learn their skills, even the license plate makers who work around metal, they can't find a job. A lot of these employers won't employ felons. So it's a catch-22 situation, and you just have to find sympathetic employers. That's your secret.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you have skills coming out of prison, and yes, while there are a lot of employers that are apprehensive about hiring a felon, if the felon has shown, as far as I've acquired these skills, while I was in prison, and this is what I know how to do of this job, and I was in prison for X amount of years and doing this particular work, so I have something to bring to the table. And these programs cost money, and so, as far as $2 an hour goes, at least they're making something, and it gives them a chance to take pride in their work of what they're doing. It's not about the money. It's more about doing something.
A day, not an hour. A day.
Okay, a day. It's still giving them something to do rather than just rotting in a cell. Would it be better if they just rotted in a cell?
Well, it would be good. I mean, you have a point. That's a part of the whole system. But rehabilitation is part of it, and that's part of rehabilitation. So, you have a point.
At one time, they had them breaking rocks. What was the point of that? It was just to break rocks, And then they'd get out and steal or do whatever they did to get in there in the first place.
That's what I'm talking about. The rehabilitation part of it only goes so far. And then the prison actually kind of just gives up on them. Or I won't say gives up on them, just lets the future hold what it holds. And when they're let out, they're on their own.
Yeah, the prison system doesn't owe them anything. The community, if they want to integrate these people from prison, it's up to their community to create, workforce programs or something to that effect, which they do have out there, and it's a part of rehabilitation, but it's after the fact of being released and, getting off of parole or while working on parole. But it's not the prison doesn't owe them anything. They went to the prison because they broke the law. So the prison doesn't owe them anything at all. In fact, the work programs is something that I think was a solid idea rather than just having them break rocks and repeat their crimes again. So it does reduce recidivism. I don't have the numbers as to exactly how much, but, at least you have some skill. And while you say license plates, that's a very small part of it. That would be until one of them, or until that person, or there was room for him or her in the program that they were seeking to get into, whether it was apparel or something else, producing eyewear, something like that. And of course, they can get their GED while in prison as well. But so these programs, they are actually grateful for having, because there is a wait list, because there are so many prisoners. When you go to state prison, because it's only state prisons that have these things. But anyway, they have to wait. So maybe a year before they even get into some type of work program, where they're learning. And that's very unfortunate. So you do have a lot of people just sitting around, just waiting on those waiting lists, depending on what you want to do and get into. So, yeah. I have a relative in prison, or did anyway. But the federal prison that she went to was basically air conditioned inside, and they had glass door windows. Basically the whole door was a window.
It must have been.
They could see through.
Was it minimum security?
It was. Oh gosh, it's in Long Beach, here in California. I'm trying to think of the name of the prison. Shoot, I just knew it too, but I guess so.
It's not jail. It's a prison. It's not jail. It sounds like it's the feds, because state and county does not have.
He was in a federal prison.
Yeah, they don't have those glass doors. There's
Federal prisons are more fancy.
right.
They're called. Sometimes they're called Club Fed. That's where Jim Baker, the evangelist, went to, a Club Fed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Terminal Island. That's what it was. It was all carpeted inside when we went to go visit as a kid. It was, yeah. He didn't serve any hard time, and he was dealing arms back and forth from Colombia, and airplane. He had his own airplane that he
sounds interesting.
Afterwards, but yeah. When I got married and I went and visited him, he's like, "Oh, you should have told me. I would have paid for your what do you call it? Your honeymoon." He says, "You could have stayed at my ranch, in Colombia." I'm like, "Oh yeah." I didn't say no, thank you. I was just like, "Oh, that would have been nice."
That was your first marriage, right?
Yeah.
So, John, what do you think of our conversation that we ended up in?
It's been very civil.
John and I almost got divorced again this week.
How many of you is that for you, John?
Oh, we all love Donald Trump, so
Including all of them.
First of all, he told me he bought my book only because he knew the next day I was gonna give him $9 or $10 for his missions project. So then he bought the book, but he bought it online, and then he didn't even know how to access it on Kindle. He didn't even know how to read it on Kindle.
no, I don't. That's another world.
And
You have
then
to open up an account and all that kind of stuff.
and then he asked if there's any hot pictures of me in the book, and that's the only way he'd read it.
And you got mad and went and divorced him because
No, we had a fight about Taylor Swift because I was mad at a company, and I put a Taylor Swift quote up that said, "It's my phone that's breaking up." Can you guys hear me?
Kind of breaking out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyways, here I'm gonna put it on non-speaker a second, but you can hear me. I put up a quote that said, your enemies will defeat themselves even before they have the chance. No, you will defeat your enemies before they even have the chance to swing at you. And it was a picture of Taylor Swift singing in concert, and John got all goofy about it and said, "Poke out my eyeballs and break my ears or something," and he went off on a tangent.
Oh.
He's a fellow artist.
Yeah, so explain.
Terrible art when he sees it.
So I feel like there's a lot of cultural conflict, even in our own little group, and I kind of get tired of the stress. You know what I mean?
Short damn stress, woman. You're the first show.
I'm on a short fuse, and then today I filed to run for public office. So now I am a public figure.
Again?
I'm running for school board. Second time in 10 years.
Okay. Good luck.
Yeah, I have an interview with the paper in a few days.
All right. Well, you better get your teachers associations back on the education association.
I have a tier 3 license.
The union, huh?
I already have a Minnesota State teacher's license.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your supporters. You're going to have supporters from the teachers union, the teachers association, hell, even individual teachers.
I know, and a lot of people know me now that I've been subbing for 2 years.
Well, then you go back to those people and say, can you let me use your name for support?
Okay, well, so what I want to ask you guys collectively...
Don't be scared now.
I want to ask you guys collectively, this is a little off topic, but when you guys have passion for one issue, or maybe it's 3 issues, like, I want to know why people think, including John especially, why people think just because you vote for a Democrat that you want open borders. Like, I never said that in my life. I never said I want open borders that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could walk through.
Everybody says the trans and women.
Or if you vote Democrat, that you're like,
white people.
You believe in surgery for people crossing over to the other sex side and all that kind of stuff. Like, I just want to know why the dogma is so rigid. Like, can't I just be a Democrat because I believe in labor unions and I believe in agricultural subsidies and I believe in helping poor people?
Labor unions are 65% Republican. These people are pulling.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
You're stupid as hell. Anyway, the thing is that.
Don't talk smack to me, Don, or I'll punch your teeth out.
You're going to divorce me too? Of these two polygamous. Anyway, the thing is that the wool is being pulled over everyone's eyes. Like I said, I'm deep into politics. I'm a journalist. I research shit. I know shit inside and out. And the perceptions that are out there in the public are completely antithetical to the perception, to the actualities of what goes on inside and underside. There are, for instance, Republicans who believe trans should play in women's sports. They just can't say it. They say it, they get killed. They actually get beat up. I've seen it. The Republicans, that's how they keep their people in line. Sure, violence and fear, threats against the family, everything. That's how they work. That's how they live.
Threats against the family? What are you talking about?
When a Republican, let's say senator, does something the Republican Party does not want them to do. They will send other Republican, pretty much senators or goons, and beat them up and make them either change their ways, or if they don't, they'll go after their family members and make them denigrate them, in social media or the actual physical violence. This is how deep politics runs. People don't understand that the death of some of these people is not out of the question.
Okay, Don, give somebody else a chance to talk, okay?
Oh, you're scared.
No, I was in the bathroom. Okay, Suzette or John, go.
I just want to give you the statistics on the unions, and this comes from the Pew Research, that about 6 in 10 voters who belong to a union, which is 59%, identify with or lean toward the Democrat Party, while the 4 in 10, which is 39%, associate with the GOP.
See, I knew I was right.
That's Pew. I'll take a look at some of the others.
So let me tell you guys something. I'm from a northern industrial state, not like Chicago. We didn't have meatpacking plants, but we had the iron ore industry up here since like the 20s, and there were unions formed on the Minnesota Iron Range, and that's where a lot of the labor union, like in our state and also in Pennsylvania with the steel industry. So that's where a lot of the traditional Democratic strongholds come from. Like, they were formed by people who believed in worker rights, similar to what Dorothy Day and the Catholic Church advocated, worker rights. So that's my tradition, being a Democrat. It has nothing to do with any of the modern issues, not a one thing to do with it.
Well, you gotta, the thing to understand about all of this, again, the basics of everything of America is that unions were initially meant to stop black people from working. That's what it absolutely is.
I really don't believe that. I don't believe that because it was people who were already working who were trying to secure more rights. And Minnesota hardly... We have like 5% blacks up here north of St. Paul, like north of Hinckley, Minnesota. Our black population is extremely sparse.
And Democratic members, union members, say that the Democratic Party serves the labor unions better. Now, this is from the Gallup, not Pew, but Gallup. And Gallup says that...
she doesn't understand.
No, I'm talking. You said union members leave Democrat.
Not you. This is James.
All right, John, you shouldn't have people saying in the background, I don't know shit.
Okay. Well, so the most... Go ahead. Go ahead, Suzanne.
So the Gallup says, as Donald Trump and Kamala Harris continue to court labor union voters, Americans are much more likely to say the Democratic Party best serves the interest of union members, 62%, than to say the Republican Party does at 27%.
All right, so what I might have is that the Nevada State might be that ratio. I might be wrong with that. If I am, I apologize. That's the first time you'll ever hear that. But
I think it depends what part of the country you're in, Don, because a lot of the Democrats organized the labor unions in the 40s a long time ago.
Well, the thing is that Pat's dad and his friends, they had to get sponsors before they could get into the union. They were longshoremen. And that was normal with anyone. The car industry, blacks didn't start getting jobs until the World War II. That was when they were stealing our land, taking our indentured servitude, and putting us in jails and killing us in lynchings. So they got rid of us, and they were able to pick out by sponsorships who they wanted to work in stressed out steel and ammunition issues. So that was the start of black normalcy in the workforce, because we were always slaves or indentured servants. So, this is something that just happened not even 100 years ago. And people don't understand. They keep asking, well, why aren't they better in better shape? Because they've been killing us for years. And it's not just, guns and nooses. It's drugs, crack drugs were brought in just for us to get hooked on, and other drugs. Heroin was, refined by us, by black people. So, there's some things that have some, that there have been headwinds that you guys don't even understand.
Well, I'm sure in some parts of the country, issues that affect you more. But I was talking about our country as a whole. Now,
our country as a whole is built on slavery. It always has been, always will be. So get it out of your head that things will get better.
Well, that's not what topic we're on. We're on the topic of why people choose certain political parties.
That's all a part of it. Because in terms of political parties, you got it at the 62% Democrat. Those are the people who want these workplace changes. They want EOEs. They want to be able to grieve and have tattletale without repercussions. That's what it's supposed.
Now, I want to bring up something in addition to that. For example, in the modern world today, where we have a lot of technical workers, like Elon Musk laid off all those people at Twitter. The Silicon Valley had a lot of shifting around in the last 2 years. There's no job security anymore in the high-tech industries. Suzette or John, could you weigh in on this topic?
I tend to, the reason a person joins the KKK is because they probably don't like black people. And the reason people join a party or support a party like the Democratic Party or Republican is they have a platform. They come up with, this is what our views, this is what we're going to promote. So I believe them for what they say. I sent you guys a link. They had LGBTQ+ day at the White House. They put colors on the White House. They didn't put a Christian cross. They didn't put any religious beliefs. They put gay pride, and they raised a gay pride flag above the United States flag. That's what Joe Biden did. He says that. I believe him. Don't believe me. Believe what they say. I'm sending you a link over. I just watched his debate with Trump. He said, "Listen, we're going to this Roe versus Wade thing. They're wrong, and women got to have their reproductive rights. They're pro-abortion. That's what he ran on. So I just believe them for what they say. Are they lying?
No, but I think
babies in the womb.
I think when there's only two political parties, nobody can tailor make which. I can't tailor make which party is going to do what.
Well, I'll ask you. I'm not telling you. Who are the two parties that were going to win? Is Democrat or Republican, right?
Who knows?
Well, no. Just 48 to 47, 46, right? And what did everyone else got? 2%. So 1 out of 100 or 2. I'm not trying to argue. We get in these things and argument and debate, like I'm so mean and nasty. I'm just believing what they say. There's two parties that can win, 48, 46. If that's why none of these people go independent, because Trump won't go independent because he wouldn't win. You have to have the party. So it's two choices. you support. If you're anti-Trump, he's the only one that's pro. He appointed these judges that went Roe versus Wade. He's the only one who stopped the border. Everyone else is saying he's xenophobic, he's racist, he's a dictator, he's Hitler. On the news, they say it every night. So
a lot of Instagram.
I'll say that. I'll just send you what they say.
I know what they say. I see it on Instagram every night.
So what do they say? So tell me again. Don't argue with. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, what do they tell you?
I'm not arguing with you either. I'm just saying that when I pick a party out of tradition, I have my own reasons. It's not because I'm not even a gay rights advocate. I'm a Southern Baptist.
Well, let me ask you, what's your core values? What are the 5 most important things to you? Is the border on one of your 5?
I'll let you know.
Is trans rights?
Can you let me say it, and then I'll let Suzette.
I said 5 things. I was going to give you 5 things.
Well, let me say it.
Hold on a second. See, I start to talk, and you get super agitated.
No, I'm just saying you asked me what my 5. He asked me what my.
I'm explaining what's happens when we have conversations. I just said, let me tell you the 5 things. Where do you stand on them? Before you started going, you raised the temperature. I'm trying to keep the temperature really low.
I thought you asked me what my 5.
So it's a normal GOP ploy.
So what are the 5 core values that you really care about, and when you pick a party?
The first core value is protecting poor people in the safety net.
Okay.
The second core value is like tolerance and diversity of race. I'm not talking about gay rights or anything. I'm talking about race alone, like accepting people for who they are and not picking on other races. The third thing I care about is having a pragmatic federal and state budget that continues proper medical care, proper health insurance, and proper, like if you're a worker and you're paying into your own employer, that's a decent rate. Or if you're on MNsure, which is an Obama thing, that it's reasonable and you're not paying through the nose. And the fourth thing is not get involved in a bunch of proxy wars. And the fifth thing is love your neighbor as yourself.
That's nice.
I only really have 4 things, so I just threw in the last one.
Right, so basically you want a kumbaya, peace and love. You don't want wars. You want people to just love each other and be respectful. That's a very Jesus thing. Yeah, and like programs that are effective, like the Pell Grant for people just starting out college. I think things like that specifically should remain in place. Because I'll just give my son as one example. He went to Lake Superior College twice and he dropped out. And he had free college. But then because he dropped out 1 quarter, he had to pay $900 because he blew the free ride. So it wasn't free after you dropped out. You still had to pay a price. So people who are stupid like that just completely take for granted that you're getting a free education at a junior college level. So people should be aware of what they're throwing away before they do it. That sounds pretty good. So who do you think would accomplish those goals? Gavin Newsom. Okay. And California, therefore, since he is a mayor and a governor, we have a blueprint to follow his track record. So is California known for racial equity and lack of, gang violence and people disrespecting each other, or? Depends what city you live in. It depends what part of the state you live in.
You know that let's live and let live, kind of like. Living down there, I came from Wisconsin, so I was always social. I was also friendly. I'd say hi and things like that. Moved to California, and you live in the apartment living. You don't even know your neighbor. You can live. My father lived in a house for 22 years and had maybe 2 friends the whole time, and they weren't even friends. They were more or less acquaintances that he meets when he comes off the elevator. It's so sad that apartment living lifestyle is prevalent, and it really doesn't really bode for good social interactions.
Right.
That's one of the things about California.
It's everywhere because of United Nations and Stacker Tax.
Yeah, well, it's more prevalent in LA and
New York,
San Francisco than it is almost anywhere else. New York, they go out of the house. They have to, because they're living on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always rainy. And I was in New York in January. It's rainy. It's dim. The skyscrapers cover up the sun, so there are a lot of places that never even see sun. And it's the people are they're so into them, into getting what they need for themselves, that they don't have really time for too many other activities and social interactions. So in a way, New York is a little bit different because they're so dense that they have to go out to dinner and walks and things like that. Where in LA, you go to work, you go home, and you're there. No matter what it is. What type of.
But then you have suburbia, outside of LA, and so it's a completely different story.
Well, they do the same thing. Those people.
No, people know we know our neighbors here.
Oh,
we live on cul-de-sacs and housing.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Suzette knows at least 4 neighbors.
When you get past Downey, you're over there, past Sierra Madre. Yeah, you're in kind of a more rural, suburbia world.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to touch on a little bit about you were asking about tech engineers or Silicon Valley and this situation with them, and back in 2011, 2012, they were hiring a lot for those type of jobs, engineering jobs and coding jobs and things having to do with tech. And it really increased during the pandemic part, of our era. And they were also being highly subsidized at that time by our government. And the reason, I believe, by design, is to get all these people, in colleges learning this and outside of, going to tech schools and whatnot, so they could get a jump on this AI. And now with AI, being implemented in almost every aspect of our lives as far as functioning, I think that's why Donald Trump was laying off all these people from different government agencies to replace them with AI. So now that these programs exist, they don't need these people anymore. And their startup, in part of their jobs that they have as far as in the tech business, are failing. They don't have any, inspiration, ideas, or whatever. They're just failing, not like before, where they were booming. And so government got what they wanted from their subsidies, and now these people are going to be out of work left and right, competing for jobs because they did the job already. It's done. They put themselves out of work being so brilliant and building these technologies that they built themselves right out of a job. And I wish people, would understand when they get into different industries of work, why they may be booming, what's coming next after that. These people were promised, an ironclad job, not to have to worry about, being unemployed. This is great because you can advance, and along with technology advancing and so on and so forth. And turns out that ironclad just died, 2024, 2025. So that's what I know about what happened with that, and why we're going to be hearing more reports about tech industries laying off more and more people.
Well, that started in 47's first term. He wanted to tighten up some of the tech industry immigrants who came over, Chinese, Indians, East Indians. He wanted to stop those folks from coming over en masse like they were doing with their green cards for tech jobs. And he wasn't able to really do that then. So, I don't know how much input he's had with this whole thing where the techies are losing their jobs. But,
well, they were being subsidized before those subsidies just dried up. And again, this started back in 2011. This is according to Futurism and Forbes and the New York Times as well, telling the story. So, we're under the Barack Obama's presidency. They were heavily subsidizing these tech companies,
right.
Because they wanted innovation. Yeah, well, and so now the subsidies are dying out, and there's no need for these engineers or coders because AI is so expensive. The thing that they created, it's so expensive, and also they don't need them anymore because they built what they wanted. Yep. So.
Well, they were slaves anyway. Because what happened is that they were only here on like $30,000, $40,000 stipends. The green card workers, the tech workers, the engineers. So they weren't making the ones who were here temporarily. They weren't making and who weren't immigrants. They weren't making a lot of money at all. And so whenever their green cards ran out, they were in a kind of a selection pool that goes back and stays. So that's how they were doing it. And Trump now is this the most incredible shit in the world is that he's bringing in South Africa, and now El Chapo's family is coming in with his blessing.
What?
So we're looking at a whole situation where prices are going to go up. Everything that he said is turning back to hit him in the face, and he can't. It's out of control because the people who he's appointed don't have any skill. Kristi Noem don't know shit about Homeland, and he takes that. I don't even know what he knows.
Well, it's the Secretary of State that would bring them in. Pete Texas has nothing to do with that, nor does Kristi Noem.
Well, all I know is that there's something wrong. There's something that's going haywire, and if somebody doesn't come in and fix it, that knows that somebody we probably don't even know yet.
Marco Rubio is Secretary of State.
Is it really that bad? Because I'm going to the Philippines in a couple of months. I've waited 2 months. Had to get my birth certificate. Had to fill out my applications. Had to run and hustle, pay money, $135 plus blah blah blah, to go to another country. How can 3 million people come into our country every year, 3 million, without a visa and live?
Because our corporations depend on slave labor. You didn't hear the show. slave labor. You might have gotten on Reddit right when I started talking about it. Our country is run by slave labor. We were talking about, you were there when we were talking about Suzette Nash prison. Slave labor. Right. It's, whether it has rehabilitative qualities and embedded in there or not, it's still slave labor.
So Trump is ending slavery at the border, and he's always got the first step. He's actually trying to get people out of prison. I mean, it doesn't sound like he's pro-slavery.
We have enough people right now. That's the only reason. And then, he's only looked at 20,000 people that have been deported so far. Something like that. But it's not huge.
There were 300,000 a month were entering. Isn't that a fact? So since he's been president, times 5 months, 300,000. It's 1.5 mil. Is that right? Yeah. Because 3 million. Yeah, it's over half a year.
Well,
almost over 1 million people have an.
Don't worry about it.
That's a problem.
We know. We need the fucking workload. Well,
how come I can't go? Okay, well, again, how come I can't go to another country illegally? I can't go to any other country. I can't go to Japan. I can't go to China, Russia, India, nowhere. I can't go to Mexico. You have to have your passport when you come back in. You have to.
Right. Well, that's what
so why are we different?
These white people did that, John. They're
actually, they're not supposed to do that.
No,
they're supposed to have a passport. They're supposed to become a.
White people should be in jail, white-collar crimes. Half of these businesses are running some kind of illegal operations or have some illegal situations going through. These guys, there was an expose talking about in many of these industries, banking and financial especially, when I was going over education, the easiest industry to steal from. We're talking about this money that these people have, especially when you talk about the generals who are illegally, transporting humans and guns and drugs. I mean, these people, this is all an illusion. This shit is unreal because half of these people are doing illegal stuff. And Suzette, if she thought about brother-in-law, whoever it is, she knows. The wealth that we're seeing is to a large part unethically obtained. And it's all, white people taught everybody else how to do it. But, people of color, we don't revere money that much under normal circumstances. But when you learn how to do it, and then learn how to be really good at it, a good thief or a good murderer or whatever, then the world sees that people of color are better than the whites at doing it, and then the whites have to come in and do a 47 and just try to take the country back. And this is overt conversations about taking the country back. His fucking mantra, take the country back, make America great again. What the fuck does that mean?
Well, how much money did Kamala spend on her campaign?
Mexicans are done. Back to the 1900s, back to 1850. How far back does he want to take us?
Well, I mean, did Kamala spend the most amount ever on a campaign to get elected?
Yeah, but Kamala was a lame duck when they. We're seeing that these white people are out here tripping about lying about how their health is. This man shouldn't have been the president probably in the first place. But Biden got
Is Diddy white or black? Beyonce white or black? Is Jay-Z white or black? Is Kanye white or black? You said Magic Johnson. Well, you said white people are all about the money. Well, black people don't care. They're black, right?
Yeah,
don't they care about money?
But Magic Johnson, Beyonce, and fucking Kanye still fuck. That's the bottom line. They still fuck.
Don, this is a G-rated show.
Or whatever, they make love. That's what you talk about when you hear.
So black people don't care about money?
Puff Daddy did more than that.
That's why do you think we're still in some of the places where money ain't we don't care about money. We care about making sure our families are safe and that our communities are well managed. That's all we care about.
Then why did Magic?
So why don't you live in Compton then, if that's the case, or South Central? Isn't that minority? Don't they care about families and stuff like that?
That's what I just said. The money is secondary. You can live in Compton.
Oh, the money's secondary. So it's safer in Compton because they care more about in Chicago, right?
More about the family. Yes.
And
that's why you're.
Oh God! Here we go.
Because you're talking about people. This tornado just went through Midwest and Kentucky and everything. People are saying they're going to continue to live there. They're going to rebuild. They ain't got a pot to piss in. But they're going to rebuild in the same place that a tornado will probably come through again. Right? These people are ignorant.
Yeah, just like Palisades, right? So those are white people that they're going to build in the same place. They want to go back, even though it's a fire zone.
Right. Well, that's yeah. Then they're going to in 20, 30 years, it's going to be the same thing. They're going to have bush, uninhabitable space, and they're going to be susceptible to fires down below, and they're going to come back up. You've got the whole Malibu shore got burned down.
And we've got things going on in Israel and Gaza between them, and so it's like the world is in chaos right now because it's been a powder cake over the last years, and it didn't have to be this way, but now we're here. So I would just implore people to think about other people. It sounds like a wishy-washy, love fest type thing, but that's not where I'm at. I'm just talking about being civil. You had brought up earlier at the beginning of your show, Jane, as far as people's differences and stuff. And we really aren't that much different, except for we have this thing where we're trying to impose our personal values. It's not necessarily the country's values. The country's values, are basically life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, other than that, that's the baseline right there. Any other personal values are basically a societal thing. And, you can't tell me that, as far as people who claim to know about abortion, understand abortion. While it's not the state's business, when I say the state, I'm talking about, the federal government or otherwise, to get their nose involved in anything. That's, separation of church and state. Now, when we talk about the abortion getting to where the fetus, where it becomes a fetus, then thereafter, that's considered murder. It's a person. It's a human being. It should be acknowledged and recognized, and many doctors do. Other, issues as far as climate change and things, we're all entitled to our opinions, and I'm sure we can come to an agreement after hearing out all the scientists, not just the select that agree with the climate activists, because there is a truth, and science is ever changing. It is not concrete, solid, this is it, and we need to do no more research on it. No, it's ever changing because there are new developments all the time, and we need to consider that as a whole. So there shouldn't be any divide on that. There should be welcoming education on that so that we can figure out the best way forward, not just for our country, but, maybe for the world as far as if they want to get involved as well. But I don't think countries should be pitted against each other, saying this one has more carbon than we do, and so they need to be punished, or, where America's basically breaking the backs of Americans in order to meet these climate goals that are absolutely not attainable, and are paying for it all while everybody else does the very least as possible and puts very little money into it. So America needs to reconsider that, and that is the job of the people. We people. And if we need to, or if we are going to hold our representatives accountable, we need to get involved. Protesting does no good. You want to do something about it, start making those phone calls to their offices, drive them crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of your conservative values is probably not overspending, not a government that doesn't constantly overspend, right?
Sure, yeah, but that's not a value of our country. That's a thought of our country, as far as these are things that should be considered not even a thought. Where we have to budget. It's not a piggy bank for these people to just go ahead and spend on whatever they want to, and we all know that, and they've been doing it for years and years and years, since the beginning of this country. And, there are different administrations or different Congresses that come in sessions that will, try to get things on the right track. But then you have others that fill these bills with other things, and it just drives me crazy. This session was supposed to commit to writing single bills, and not, including a whole bunch of garbage in it.
Are you talking about the California legislature or the Congress?
All of it. All governments, even city governments, where the city managers, are in charge of managing the budget. But they have their city council and they vote and this and that, but more or less the city manager can do what he wants with those funds for the city. But Elon Musk is upset right now because of all the money, fraud, and abuse that he had found and located, billions of dollars. And then what does Congress do? They turn around and go and spend it. That was actually supposed to be a savings for us to bring, down our debt, our deficit. Increase program money, for different things, Social Security and whatnot. Because if there was a lot of fraud and abuse that was in there, once it's wiped out, now there's money. And any other programs. But he was pissed off. He goes, why did I do all of this just so you guys can turn around and spend it? What was the point of it? So he's not happy about that. And he's been talking about spending less money and involvement in politics, because, basically he's throwing his arms up because it's like, what for? Why did I do this? What is this for? What? I don't, and I'm with him on that. It's like, well, what's the deal? And why did Donald Trump allow this? Why did you hire these guys just so you can spend that money, and we're in no better shape than we were before finding all that wasted abuse? Anyway.
So, John, do you have a comment on Suzette's speech?
Sorry, I just had to rant.
No, it's okay, because you haven't hardly talked tonight.
Well, it's good that we're aware of it, though. And even if they respend it, it's been exposed and people know, and it's something that the next election they can approach it. I mean, if you think about it, we would have a president, Biden, who would have to sit down because of Harris and because he has cancer. And they probably even say, well, he's just not fit to keep going. It's like he's going to have a lot of health issues. And we would have had these people running the country. So I'm glad that Trump won the election. They're leaving Elon alone now because he's not in the spotlight. Suddenly no one really cares about him. Let's go on to the Qatar or the Qatar plane, and that's going to be the big thing. And then once that's done, it's going to be something else. And it's not really positive spin from the media. The media takes no responsibility for lying. You know how vicious they were? If you insinuated that Joe Biden was incompetent or was losing his mind, they butchered people. Butchered them on TV. I mean, and Tapper, who's come out with this book, I guess we were deceived. he was vehement. Like, he would get on these shows and tell people, you don't even know what you're talking about, Lord Trump. You're so misinformed. Newsom said, this is the best version of Biden we've ever had. This is like 6 months ago, 8 months ago. They lied.
I think her name is Lara Trump, not Laura.
Thank you for the correction. They lied. See that? Are you
the thing is
everyone
everyone knew he was sick, but then
no, they did.
Well,
no, they did.
Well, wait.
Well, why did they allow him to debate?
Well, I was saying that J.D. Vance, this week when J.D. Vance was asked about his illness, on one hand he gave his condolences in a sense, his wish me well, but then he went to this diatribe on, I blame the Democratic Party for not keeping a better eye on him.
Shouldn't they have being that sick for that long and not mentioning it to the public? Didn't we have a right to know?
Well, then I saw somewhere that somebody said, how come Jill Biden didn't know that he was in stage 5 cancer?
She's a doctor.
No, she's a doctor of education.
She's not. There wasn't any way that she didn't know. I mean, she attended all of the events overseas that he went to only because he wasn't able to function, basically, or communicate. She was constantly by his side and directing him because she knew.
Yeah, I don't know who. I didn't accuse anybody of lying, including the Republicans. I'm just saying that. Well, I think it was stupid of him to stay in office that long if he was that sick, because I know that days that I have real bad diabetes problems, I can only go 3 hours before I gotta sit down.
I blame the Democratic Party. If he's that sick and that mentally incapacitated, he doesn't know what he's doing. But you have his party that comes before anything else, constantly throwing him out there when he has to be, because he'll disappear for a while and then people will start saying, hey, where's Joe Biden? Or some meeting overseas will come up and then they'll show briefly, him sitting there at the table with the rest of the leaders and maybe trying to say something of some coherence and that's it. That's all you'll hear about it. And then you'll have the news make a story about it or his team will make a story and send it to the media to put it out there for the American people. But I blame the Democratic Party because they knew. But they didn't want to put Kamala in, and either that or the people running the show didn't want anybody else running it. They knew how bad he was when he ran, in 2020.
I was mad.
Better for them.
I was mad when on Super Tuesday, when they forced Bernie Sanders to drop out. When he had the most momentum possible. And the Democratic Party pulled the rug on him. And he's old too, but he has tons of energy. And that was a really...
Nobody got punished for that.
That was a coup d'etat.
All day long. All day long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's your name? That was running the convention there at the Democratic Party helped Hillary. And she's still in Congress right now to this day. But, and nothing happened with her. And that would be considered election interference because basically they took Bernie Sanders out, and said Hillary will be. And so, Bernie, you got to tell your supporters to support Hillary. That. So it wasn't the people.
Did you know it at the Nevada Democratic Convention, the Bernie people refused to give in, and there was a big fight.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that's her name.
Yeah, there was a big fight. The Nevada Democrats in Vegas were going to stand their ground, and they weren't going to endorse. I believe it was Biden in 2020. I don't think it was Hillary in 2016.
Well, no, but they did that to Bernie back in 2016 as well.
Mm-hmm.
When he was running,
they did it twice, but in 2020 is the one that pissed me off more.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because they did it on Super Tuesday.
Yeah, they did.
They forced Bernie to pull out before the 11 states voted. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there was a lot of shenanigans going on. I mean, the 2016, you have Donna Brazile, one of the debates giving Hillary the answers to the questions so she could prepare ahead of time. Anything happened to her? No. But Democratic Party, I just don't understand how a party can support such deception, and cheating and so on and so forth.
Well, there's a lot of layered political pandering in the Democratic Party.
Yeah. I mean, the Republican Party, they I don't know. When you had what's his name that ran against Obama? He seemed like he was going to do all right.
Mitt Romney?
The second debate, he didn't even show up, and he turned out to be a very big disappointment.
Was it Mitt Romney?
Mitt Romney.
Yes.
Mitt Romney kept repeating the same points in every debate.
Yeah. I know.
I was the chair of the Olympic Committee, and I know how to run a business. But I did like him as a person, though.
Oh, I didn't. I knew he was a shyster. He tried to play, I'm Mormon, so that makes me honest. I'm a family man and all this other stuff.
I don't think he was a shyster. I think he was too simple-minded.
No, he's had his dirty dealings there with businesses and foreign actors. But anyway, anyway, I think that people should not be focusing so much on Joe Biden and his cancer, but more the people who are behind the scenes running this country and making decisions for this country that were not elected to do so. They were not the commander-in-chief. They did not hold the office, the Oval Office, and yet the American people had no idea who was doing what, and while they were basically having their way with the country. And I don't blame him so much as I blame the people that were behind the show.
Why are they making such a big deal? Like, he's not in office anymore. He has a serious disease. Make one comment and then... John, are you outside?
Yeah, just a fire truck just passed by.
Yeah, like, all right, what?
It goes back to why? Because he would be running the country. It's like saying, wait a second, you almost stuck a knife in my back, and you were accusing me of lying and censoring. They were censoring a lot of information. So yeah, it's a very big deal because they want outcome. Because Comey put seashells, or he says he found it. He found seashells on the beach. It said 8647 on it. And he put it on his social media. Now, 86 means to kill, to wipe out. It's not just it's military, it's CIA, it's gang talk, it's restaurant talk, it's police talk. 86 of them. And then 47 is Trump. So he said, I just happened to see this collection of seashells. Oh, wow. And then everyone caught him on it. It's like, are you calling for the assassination of president? Which, by the way, Comey spent years going on interviews saying, Trump is not just like he has problems. He's evil. He's got to be taken out.
He doesn't have anything to do with Biden. As far as it's the party, the Democrat Party.
So did Comey find a seashell?
Biden said there's a bullseye on Trump, so that's a call to assassinate.
That goes to the party.
All right, can you repeat that story? Comey found a seashell that said 86. What is
he posted on social media, and see, a lot of it is your news sources, because Fox has been up and down on this because they're all pro-Trump. The last 3 days, nonstop. Yeah, you won't see it on CNN. You won't see it on MSNBC. I check all of them. I listen to them every day.
He was going for a walk on the beach, and he wants to fund some seashells that were put together to say 87 or 8647. And so he posted it on social media and then left it. And then he later deleted it and then put another post out saying he just assumed it was some sort of political message, but he didn't know what it was. Now, any average person walking on the beach that sees some seashells in the design of 8647, I wouldn't think a political message. I wouldn't think anything of it at all. I'd be thinking, what are these coordinates or what? Is this somebody's birthday? I don't know. No, I wouldn't assume it was a political message. So right there tells that he knew exactly what that meant, and he was sending it out.
He's a CIA director.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he did the design himself in seashells and then played dumb.
Have you ever seen seashells? I've seen like a seashell with like a message like heal the bay or something. Have you ever seen like more than 20 seashells arranged, or because it's not just. He put all those in a row to make the 86 and the 47. Have you ever seen anything like that on the beach?
No.
It was perfect.
If you left
it wasn't like mistaken.
You left it for half a day, it might be all blown over with the dirt. You know, is it nuts though? He's a CIA director. That's what they do. They whack people.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
One of my friends, he had to do step 4 today in a gambling program where you have to like pour out your whole soul and you have to answer like 50 questions about how you harm people the most with your addiction. And you have to do it with a spiritual counselor, like a pastor. And this lady said that all of our life forces are tied up in molecules. Like we give energy, we emit energy, we emit energy to people and they emit energy back. So I was reading the Summa Theologica last night it's the Thomas Aquinas thing from the 12th century. And it said that they were debating how the human body was made by God. And they said, why did God choose earth and water to create the human body? Like God created him from the earth. Why didn't he use fire and air? Because that's a more sophisticated element. And then they were talking about how angels could have got involved and created corporeal, which is it's like a substance it's like a spiritual supernatural substance that angels are made of. And that our souls might be made partly from angelic substances like corporeal. And what I'm trying to say is that, in life how you just go along and you're looking for signs, like spiritual signs. And like all of a sudden, like you come to an epiphany. Like the only time I had a supernatural experience is when Alexis died. And I heard Harmonia singing outside my front door and perfect singing and perfect chimes and perfect cymbals. I heard it was like angels were singing outside my front door. And then I opened the door and it was dead silence. So what I'm trying to say is that, like, I know we're talking about seashells and like fake seashells, but like, do you guys believe in how like you get a sign either from God or the Holy Spirit right before something's about to happen? And can those things apply to bigger life meanings, like a president about to be killed or a big transition in the world?
Yes and no. I also think that many of those signs that are for our better, as a whole, we ignore, or knock it off as coincidence or something else and never really hear and listen and pay attention to those signs. People who are late and catastrophe after catastrophe, find the keys, baby needs to be changed, whatever they weren't, that they can't get on the road and get to work and start their day, and come to find out, there was an accident that had happened, like 10 minutes before they actually had gone by that area. It's like, whoa, if I were here like 10 minutes ago, I could have been that person in the accident,
right?
Stuff like that.
So since they misplaced their keys, they were late for work and they didn't get killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I didn't want to change the topic that rapidly. What I'm trying to do is, I just can't